Rev up your engines!
Now you, like me, might wonder, why is Toyota selling a little sports car that has nothing to do with Toyota? It's actually just a rebadged Subaru, right? The Subaru BRZs, and they rebadge them, call them GR86s, but they're not Toyotas, they're Subarus. Well, you know why? Because the alliance between Toyota and Subaru is growing. They've got more plans than just some little sports car. And a lot of it probably has to do with electrification of cars. Because, I mean, look, Subaru's a small car company. Last year, Subaru sold 860,000 vehicles. Toyota sold 10.5 million worldwide. So they're so much bigger. But Toyota's obviously thinking, maybe we can do something to make electric cars together. Realize that from 2005, Toyota owned 8.7% of Subaru, but by 2019, Toyota owned 20% of Subaru. So they obviously have plans here. And it looks like a lot of it's going to have to do with electrification of cars. When you think about it, Toyota, they didn't jump into the electric bandwagon like everybody else did. They're one of the last big companies to think, okay, we're going to make an electric car, battery electric car. They got into hydrogen fuel cell electric cars, right? Nobody knows what the future's really going to be. They're probably doing this thing with Subaru, so they can use the Subaru end to mess with electric cars. They can start selling them as Toyotas, right? And if it fails, well, that was Subaru, that wasn't us. Maybe not that bad of a marketing strategy when it comes down to it. Because I was wondering, why are they selling these stupid cars that have nothing to do with Toyota? Well, maybe they have this insidious master plan. Might pan out. Who knows? Scotty says, how often does a car need to be driven? Well, that's a good question. You don't want them sitting. Cars aren't made for sitting. They will rot away, and then you'll have an endless money pit. You want to drive it at least, 20, 30 minutes a week to keep the battery up, so it charges, discharges, to spin the wheels, so they're not sitting on one part for months, and then that part will get a flat spot on the tire. Now, if you're talking about normally driving a car, as long as you drive more than like 1,500 miles a year, it's not going to hurt anything. But you don't want them just sitting there not being used. The electronics will start to rust and stuff. Rubber stuff will start to deteriorate. So, I mean, if you're going to have a car and you're not going to use it that much, try to park it in the shade so the sun, the UV rays don't break everything down. And if you got a garage, leave it in the garage. And since modern cars are all computerized, you might buy a trickle charger. You can get them for like $39, good ones. You plug it in and then you hook it up to your battery on the car, and then it charges and discharges it, so the battery will be good and the electrical system will always be up and running, because cars have storage batteries and they're not made to just sit. They're made to start the car, be recharged, start the car, be recharged, and the little trickle chargers mimic that, so they'll last longer just sitting there. I just need help. I can't make sense of this. Hey, I got a 97 Toyota 4Runner, four-wheel drive. I've been having an acceleration issue a few months since I drove through a car wash. When the air blower engaged, there was a bump. I get it more gas, but then I braked and went into reverse to catch more of the dry blower. I heard a deep rubber screech from under the car. It's been acting up. I brought it to mechanics. They don't seem to know what's going on. I can tell you what's probably going on. Don't ever do what you did. You go into a car wash, you're just supposed to let it go through the car wash. You backed up in the car wash, and then you heard a screech. Your car was going against the rollers of the car wash, and you had a horrible noise. That was your tires going in the wrong direction. You were backing up against the rollers on the car wash. You probably damaged the transmission. I've seen that happen before. You'd never want to back up when you're on some kind of a machine that's making you go forward, and then you're trying to go against that machine. You had two forces on the tire. Odds are you damaged the transmission. I've seen that happen many times. Normally when people go through car washes, they have a problem because water gets on something. But in your case, you heard that screeching noise. Don't ever, ever, ever back up in a car wash that's pulling you through. You're going so slow. They don't go through car washes fast. They're going by themselves. They're being pulled. You put it in reverse because you wanted to get more air dry. You're going against the machinery, and you heard a horrible squealing noise. That was your car trying to turn it backwards and the machine trying to push it forwards, and that screech was the tire screeching because it was straining everything, and you probably damaged the automatic transmission. Personally, I say don't ever use a car wash. I don't like them. They put micro scratches on your paint and all that stuff. I'm not a fan. You watch my video. Why not to use automatic car washes? I don't use them. I do a hand wash. I got a pressure washer. It's great for rinsing cars off and getting bird poop off, squash bugs and stuff. It works great. Stay away from car wash. You didn't stay away from the car wash, but you tried to back up when you're going forward, and you probably damaged the transmission. It's going to cost a fortune to fix it, too. That's internal wear, because the tires are trying to go backwards, the machine's trying to push it forwards, and then the tires kind of locked up and you heard them squeal. All that stress goes inside the transmission and probably damaged it. Troy Love says, good morning. I had a mechanic change your oil gasket on my L5 my X3, the next day the engine seized. Is it his fault? Well, I kind of would tend to blame him that if the next day the engine seized up, I don't know which gasket he put on, the engine seized. First, check the oil. If there's no oil, it's his fault for not filling it up. Depends on which gasket he did, of course. If he did the head gasket, it's definitely his fault because he took the whole engine apart to do the head gasket. If he didn't put oil back in, yeah, it would be his fault. Kind of more than a coincidence that the vehicle goes out the next day, but if it's full of oil, could just be a coincidence. It is a BMW, and after all, they're endless money pits as they age. But if there's no oil in the engine, it's definitely the guy's fault for not filling it up or creating a bigger leak and it all leaked out. Anthony says, Scotty, how can I prevent carbon buildup in a direct injection engine? Buy a Toyota. Their direct injection engines, all the new ones, they don't have any problems with them. They have a better design. To prevent it, the main thing is change your oil and filter every 5,000 miles. Use that new GF6 oil. It's made for direct injection engines. Don't listen to this crap that, oh, you can change your oil every 10 or 12,000 miles. No, it's dirty oil that causes a lot of that problem. So if you change it every 5,000 miles with a full synthetic GF6 oil, you shouldn't have any problems. Steve Jones says, should I buy a really boring Toyota? Depends on what you mean by boring. If you think boring is a vehicle that will always start, hardly ever break, be very cheap to maintain, then, it is a boring vehicle. Now, if you want an exciting vehicle, get a Jaguar or a Fiat. And then you never know. Is it going to start? Oh my God, my emotions are going wild. It broke again. It's going to cost me $3,500 to fix it this time. Look at a Toyota Camry TRD. They've been making for a couple of years. They're excellent vehicles, fun to drive, and they're not boring at all. And of course, it depends on what do you really want. A lot of people get totally carried away with stuff. They say, well, this car goes 200 miles an hour. This other one only goes 124 miles an hour. How fast do you really want to go, You're paying for something you're never going to use. Mitrock says, I got 2020 Elantra. It uses double the EPA fuel rating. Dealer shop said it's normal for it to use more fuel. Help. Oh, what a lot of BS. Now, if you're using twice, if it says it gets 30 and you're getting 15, there's something wrong with your vehicle. End of story. Now, understand one thing. The EPA rating in Michigan somewhere, they test vehicles, but they only test a very small percentage of all the cars out there each year. And they are tested on a dynamometer. They're not tested in real world with heat, cold, wind, all that stuff. Many of the figures are just given by the manufacturers, and they just make them up. I have seen cars. I had a Lexus that I was testing out. It was rated at 34 miles a gallon on a highway, and it got like 23 going the speed limit on cruise control. So you can't believe half of the crap that they give you, right? But if you're getting half of it, unless you're a maniac. Now, if you're a maniac, yes. Give you a perfect example. I had a 2012 GT 500 Shelby, right? It was rated at like 14 miles a gallon. I got 3 because I drove like a maniac. It was free. The gas was free. I thought I'd see how fast this thing goes, right? So it got horrible gas mileage. If you're driving like a normal person, there's something wrong with your car. Nathan says, I'm looking to buy a 2019 Lincoln Navigator. Do they still have cam phaser issues? I'm tired of minivans. I had a Honda Odyssey. My 99 cam phaser isn't working right, I'm sure. That's 60,000 miles. Should I take the losses and get rid of it? Should I get it fixed? Here's the thing. You can bypass the whole system if you want. You can get a kit that locks them in, and they run perfectly fine. Just lock those cam phasers, and then they don't have the problem anymore, and then you can drive it forever. That's what I do. That's what people do here all the time in Tennessee. They're like, hey, it's a stupid design. I'm not going to spend a fortune fixing it. There's a kit that I can lock them in place, and away I go. That's what I'd do if I were you, and then they can run a really long time. It was just a stupid idea, poorly designed, poorly built, but there are the kits you can buy that you can lock them in place, call around your local mechanics and see who's willing to install it, what they charge, and then it should last a really long time. You can bypass that stuff. DeCamelo says, I recently bought a 1993 4Runner. Needs a new power steering pump hose. I've never done it before. I want to make sure I do it right. Give me some tips. All right. Well, 1, work on the car first thing in the morning when it's ice cold. You don't want to burn yourself, right? Gradually take it apart. Don't be in a hurry. The part on the pump is usually the hardest to get off. It's on super tight. You might get a long extension bar, and then you can put a socket on it. You'll pull it, and it'll go crack, and then it's loose, and then it's easy to take off, right? Getting the hose on to the power steering rack can also be a hassle, because down there's not much working room. So, do like I do. Get a crowfoot wrench that fits. The crowfoot wrenches are just like that. And then you put it on a ratchet, and they can fit in many small spaces, and you can break it loose. If you get a regular wrench, a lot of times there's no room to get a wrench in there. But the crowfoot wrenches, little crowfoot pieces, and then your ratchet snaps on. And if you got a good ratchet with a swiveling head, you can swivel it all over, get in enough position to break it loose. The crowfoot wrenches work really good for getting the lines off the power steering rack. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.